Yo, 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 what is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy BN. Today, we are going to be taking a look at the latest Call of Dragons Q&A hot topics. Now, I want to say the hot topics portion of the Q&As that they have done, because if you recall, they started with standard Q&As, right? So it's like Q&A number 1, number 2, right, number 3, etc. And then they eventually did dev feedbacks. And then they started doing the Hall of Kings Q&As. And then the fourth version of this eventually kind of became Hot Topics, right, as we know it today. And this was about more, I guess you would almost, I kind of consider Hot Topics to be the suggestions that the community really, really wants / is really, really important to them. And that's kind of how I would generalize it. However, we're going to read the latest one, which just dropped a day ago for August. And as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw those out. Because I've said a lot. Thanks. Okay. Haven't opened this yet. So first time, Aroni. Starting at the top. Does it have downvotes on it? Okay. So nothing yet overall. Okay. I thought it was just the comments. Okay. So starting at the top. Okay, Lords. Okay, lovely. Let's go to the first one here. Question 1. Currently, camp versus camp team-up scenarios only give occupation rewards to a single warband. Will you issue rewards to other alliances within the same camp? Answer. In current team-up seasons, warbands can only be composed of alliances from the same starting region. This is how we've always known it. This has led to circumstances where the final occupation award cannot be given to alliances from other regions that also took part in the fight, i.e. basically allow for, other players, other contributing players in other kingdoms. So if that just ends up being the top alliance from each kingdom, if it's maybe any participating and contributing fighters from other kingdoms, especially if you have a team of 4, a team of 6, a team of 8, why would you not allow for the team to get the rewards as well? I think that this is an absolutely valid point, and I actually think it would help a lot of the, let's just say, betrayals that we have seen, and I've covered many of them, or quite a few, and in most cases, it just comes down to who feels like they're more deserving than another. Now, you can always create different rewards based on rankings and statistical contributions where it's not up for debate on like who's going to get this who's going to hold this objective building until the end of a particular Augerstone chapter, and then you get these rewards or at the end of season, etc. Right? The game they can do things that can fix this, because this absolutely should not be a thing. So I hope that this will end up happening. Okay. So we will be adding a new feature to later Augerstone phases and team-up seasons, allowing alliances from different regions to form warbands. This will improve intra-camp cooperation and reward allocation. We hope that this change will make seasons more balanced. Thank you to everyone for your support and feedback. This deserves an upvote. Again, this is a step in the right direction. Now, again, they say that they'll allow for you to team up, basically, which, to be fair, it should kind of already have been the case from the first time they introduced the team up, because why would you not have a better overall reward distribution or consistent reward distribution, at least at minimum in one area, when you have multiple kingdoms that are on the same team, right? To me, it's a no-brainer. So I do think this is a step in the right direction, but we'll have to see exactly how that looks at, because as always, right, sometimes the wording can be a little funny, but again, I think that this is overall good. In number 2, in current Season of Strife team-up scenarios, I love how there's 2 back-to-back questions regarding this. Realm matchmaking can fail during registration, which is a very frustrating experience. Do you have plans to fix this? I wonder if they're going to mention the thing that they talked about in the update, where if a matchup is unbalanced or if it's unfair or if it's a team not found, that they will that they'll just basically skip or dodge, right? Like that season, which obviously would suck, but it can happen. We are currently working on a registration readjustment feature. Yeah, there you go. See, that's what it is, which we hope will reduce the frequency of matchmaking failures. The registration readjustment feature will be a part of the update 1.0.04. If your realm agrees to readjustment, you will be prioritized to transfer to another team or Season of Strife scenario in realm matchmaking if realm matchmaking fails. Okay, this is a new piece of information, because They never said in the patch notes, from what I recall reading, that you could be transferred to another team. Now, we know that if you are a kingdom that has already skipped 3 times, and or if you don't have a king or queen at your kingdom, you might get auto placed into an existing team that still needs more kingdoms, or for potential overflow / filler kingdoms. That has happened. Now, in the update, in the patches, I remember them saying that you might skip a Season of Strife scenario if the realm matchmaking fails. The reason why I think it's important here that they added this part is because what happens if you don't want to leave the G2 kingdom pool? Now, keep in mind, this would be a lot easier, and they wouldn't have to necessarily add this line of Season of Strife scenario realm, meaning that you would get pushed to a different group. So you'd go to the G3 group, or the G2, you'd go to G3, right? Most likely. But you could maybe go to G1. And so the way to basically reduce that, and I'm going to use this opportunity to beat the dead horse, is if you just combine all of the Season of Strife kingdoms into one KVK kingdom pool. This way you eliminate the need for people to feel like they need to go to a different gen. And on top of that, when you have more kingdoms, and I'll keep saying it, when you have more kingdoms in the same pool, you get more, you have more likely of a chance, a higher percentage chance to get more fair and balanced matchups. We have only seen, the proof is in the pudding. We've been seeing this happen arguably for the past couple seasons when it comes to the G2 pool. Why? Because the G2 pool has kept growing and growing and growing. And probably the best example of that so far was last season for Rise of the Dragon, before this current one, where, I mean, it was arguably like the best KVK season in a very long time. It was very, very fair and balanced matchups. And guess what? Basically almost all the kingdoms and all the KVK groups were able to have all the kingdoms make it to the final zone, and we all got to see longer lasting PvP happening in the FZ and more overall fighting happening throughout the KVK season. I mean, it's a win. Okay, question 3. It's not clear how realm classification works in Season of Strife team-up scenarios. What will you do to improve this? And I think what they mean by the classification is the A, B, C, D seeds, right? We do know to a degree on what goes into this. However, because I've shown this off, right? At least when it comes to like some soft stats that we've looked at, if you're looking at like a top 300 power, right, minus subtracting your 15 mil farms or 15 mil power accounts and below, even though we know that they have stated that they use total kingdom power, right, regardless of how small the account is. It could be 7,000 power, right, as long as it's on the map, and it's on the map by the time registration's happening, it'll count, right? And this is one metric among others that they utilize. But one of the biggest challenges that we've seen from all of this is because of the disparity in power gap between the A, B, C, and D seeded kingdoms. And I will give you an example here, right? So let me show you this. So this is the sheet. This is my master sheet. I have a public one for this current KVK, right? That's on my Discord. But if you look at the A seeded kingdoms, this is what we're talking about here, right? So we can really hammer this point home. You have 30 billion power kingdoms, right? And it's probably more than that because, again, like I said, mine are excluding 15 million below accounts, and we're only looking at the top 300. So you look at this number, and then you see that these are all A's. If I go all the way down, you have 14 billion power to 30 billion power. That's a 16 billion power gap between the top and the bottom of A-seeded kingdoms. Makes absolutely no sense. The gap is too wide. So you either need to, as an example, do it to where you either need to add in more classifications, or you remove the A, B, you remove like the whole seed stuff, and you just do like the top 4 are in one group, the next 4, 5 through 8 are in the next one, 9 through 12 are in the next one. That's one way to do it, right? And again, this isn't to say that it's more perfect or it's better as an example. I'm just saying that's one way to do it if you want to make it more fair and more balanced, right? Again, we're not saying it's going to be perfect, but it definitely would have been better in a sense than doing probably what they've done in the team up. Because the challenge is that if you're teaming up, like another example is you could have just done it where only A-seeded kingdoms can team up. Only B-seeded kingdoms can team up with each other, right? And you could still do your paragons, right? If you want to kind of give the top 4, whomever, right, in a special classification. In this case, right, or top 3, right? Like they did here with BTX, Echo, and Rage's kingdoms. That is one way to do it. The other way to do it is if the system factors in all their metrics and they just look for like the best 4 kingdoms to pair. The reason I say that is because you don't have enough kingdoms right now that arguably can compete with a kingdom like Echo, right? Like if we're just calling it how we see it, right? Echo is basically turned into the new TFS, the new Noir at one point, right? Where they are the creme de la creme, right? I think that's easy to say right now when you consider them, when you consider their fighting prowess, right? For the past couple seasons, and I think even this season absolutely was exacerbated so much more. So again, you need to do something here that is going to, and again, I don't want to get too far off on a tangent here because there are some things that you can do to fix this, but the short version is you need to work on sandwiching. So you need to cap the top off at a certain point and you need to build the bottom up. So the bottom needs to come up and you got to cap the top off or do things where you could maybe shrink the top a little bit. I'm not saying a lot is one other way to approach it, but you absolutely need to work on the bottom and build them up. And there are a number of ways to do that. We've talked about this before. Okay, let's get back to the Q&A here. So, okay, their answer. Realms are currently classified depending on the number of participating realms and their total influence. Total influence is not the same as power at the moment. The top 20% of realms by total influence are classified as A, with the next 20% B, next 30% C, next 30% D. Okay, that's interesting. I don't know if they've ever stated that before. The number of realms in each class may change slightly depending on the number of realms registering. We are currently designing ways to display realm data during the classification phase that will help to improve transparency and allow players to better understand each realm's total influence. These will include certain core indicators for realms in each class, such as the number of players in different power bands or season activity data, merits, kills, and deaths. Okay. Again, I'll give this one a thumbs up if it actually lets me click it. And I say that because I'm always down for more transparency. And I think being able to have more public viewable information for the average player will help in a good number of ways, right? I think it's, again, like I stated before, for one of the previous ones, I think it's a good step in the right direction. The challenge here, and let me explain what one of the biggest problems is that when you are taking a percentage of realms, for example, the top 20% is A, 21 through 40% is B, and you have such a massively wide power gap, the quality of the kingdoms within your top 2 seeds, or any seeds for that matter, when the gap is so wide, it doesn't really do as much as you probably think it does. And so it's nice to see that. But now you need to work on improving the quality of each seed by having more. Basically, you just need more kingdoms that are, like, as an example, you would need more kingdoms. Like, imagine if you had 100 kingdoms all at around 25 billion power. Probably would be having a lot more exciting. And again, I'm generalizing here, right? So follow with me. You would most likely, more than likely, have way more fair and balanced KVK matchups, but you'd have longer lasting PvP sessions throughout the entire KVK season. That's kind of what we're talking about. So, okay, let's get to number 4. There are a lot of servers in the game that are relatively inactive. I wonder if they chose this question because I did a video talking about how many dead/deadish kingdoms there were when we looked at data that we had from July 7th, right? So about a month and a half ago. But again, I imagine other people have to be talking about this as well. Why haven't you taken steps to merge them, right? Answer. We are currently working on a server merger feature, which is expected to be added to the game soon. Interesting. So I say this because somebody that I know, I'm not going to say if it's a guy or girl. I'm just going to say someone I know told me that this was already, and you know who you are, so shout out to you. But you told me, so you were hammered on the head on this one. I was told by this person that the game file was already in the folders or directory or game system, etc. before this was announced. He told me this like a couple days ago, I think, at least as of recording. So maybe it was a week ago or so. So that's very interesting. Okay. I want to say first and foremost that am I slightly getting a little wet downstairs? Absolutely. However, I just did a video talking about the merger announcement that they made for Rock. And I talked about kind of how they were implementing it there, what I thought some of the good things were, and what some of the opportunities were. Let's finish reading this though. We are planning to merge together low activity servers. Once the merger is complete, these servers will migrate to a new map of Tamaris where the struggle to become king will recommence with the Argostone process expected to last 20 days. Later, these merged servers will re-enter Season of Strife matchmaking process where their regeneration and renewal will lead to better quality matchmaking experience. Merger criteria and certain post-merger events are still being formulated. We'll let you know as soon as we have more information. I'm shocked that no one upvoted this. This is absolutely, and I'm just going to give my signature here. This is absolutely so far the best feature, sneak peek or announcement in this Q&A currently. Just, it's not even close. It's not even close because this feature alone will ensure so many things for the health of the game that not only has to do with the spending capacity, the activity, the replayability, the engagement, the KVK balance. It affects so many things, so much more than I probably have the time to really dive into now. I'd have to do a separate video on this to really break down how massive and how great of a change this can and hopefully will be. So yes, but again, only if it's done right. Okay, let's go to the next one. Question 5. I'm telling you, the hot topics, they're like on fire right now. Like they are, and I want to point out, if you haven't noticed this already, they're really taking the time to give more depth and detailed responses in their hot topics Q&As that I've been noticing. This is probably one of the best ones, if not the best one that I've seen so far that they've done. This is the kind of things that you've always heard me talk about when they're doing a Q&A and the kind of responses and detailed the responses. And again, I'm not saying they need to write paragraphs and a whole dissertation and break everything down, but give us a little bit more than 1 or 2 sentences. And so I'm really appreciating that while we're reading this. Seeing as legendary city themes are now available from the Exchange Store and the Reliquary system, which is again, basically the ability to stack city themes that we now know, which is, as we've been saying, it's OP, right? Not OP in the sense of like it beats out everything else, but it is in a way. And I just don't believe that it should be the case. Like, I just don't know why they would have added something like that in. Like, where were people suggesting that? I don't know if I ever saw a single suggestion asking for the community to upvote, hey, you know what we really need right now? The ability to stack multiple city themes. And their buffs. Like, no, never saw one of those submitted. But if there was, someone will let me know, I'm sure. Are you considering bringing back past legendary city themes? Answer. After the introduction of the Reliquary system, we have received a lot of feedback from players regarding legendary city themes that they were unable to obtain in the past. Oh, I'm sure. Because the first thing that comes to mind for me is, and again, I don't really keep up with city themes too much, but what if there was some really like OP city themes or some ones that they would really want to add in to like stack similar buffs or ones that complement each other, etc.? Could that be the case? Okay, well, now we're just kind of making the system a little bit like we're basically buffing the system and it didn't even need to exist in the first place. Sure, why not? Okay. Yeah. In order to provide players with the variety of high-level city themes that they desire and to reduce possible disparities between old and new players, you've already created a massive disparity just by adding the system in. Unless, like I said, the only way that it wouldn't have been is if you allowed free-to-play players to acquire legendary city themes at a pace where, as an example, they could at least get like 3 legendary city themes by the time they get into Season of Strife, right? Or maybe by the time they finish 3 KVK seasons. Now, I don't know if there is enough time to accomplish that for the average, and that's what I'm talking about here, the average free-to-play player, right? I would guess no. But if something like that existed, then like we've said before, as long as it's free-to-play friendly and there's ways to acquire every single legendary city theme through free-to-play means, even understanding that it would take longer to do so than someone who is spending, which is totally fine. If something like that exists, I'm all for the system. But I haven't seen anything yet or anything that someone has told me about the system that actually meets that, to me, is a bare minimum standard. So, again, if that exists, and again, I just may not be aware, someone can please feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I'd love to hear what you guys think on this one. Okay, so we have, where is it? Okay, we are planning to bring back a number of past Legendary City themes as part of the Heights of Power event planned for late September. Just like before, players will be able to exchange 6 seals of power to obtain a city theme. Okay, keep an eye on future announcements. For city themes in particular, city theme you'd like to see coming back, please let us know by filling in the survey at the end of this Q&A. Okay, question 6. Some unit types are not commonly used in rally and garrison combat. Will you be doing anything to remedy this? In rally garrison scenarios, many players look for units with high survivability, which grants them more time to receive backup from other alliance members. In this situation, cavalry, marksmen, and magic units are particularly prized. We are currently planning ways to rebalance the survivability of the 4 unit types in rally garrison scenarios without affecting the results of combat. Many players also make use of the cavalry unit skill Unyielding Rush to frequently cast rage skills by rushing at ranged rally armies, dealing heavy damage for low losses, and putting ranged rallied armies at a major disadvantage. As a result, we are also planning to weaken the benefits that cavalry units receive when rushing ranged rallied armies. To be fair, I actually... Do I like the creativity for it? Absolutely. And I think they just need to set a standard. That's really where I fall on it. I like this because they're basically saying, like, we're just going to we're putting our foot in the sand. We're going to draw a line in the sand on how we feel about this. And we want it to be something where, like, no one basically can attack a rallied army except for a rallied army, right? Or for, if you're defending against the rallied army, but it's like, city, garrison, pass garrison, etc. Like it's bastion garrison, like something like that is defending against the rallied army, and it's not like a bunch of people can go like chip away. However, if they opted to go in that direction, I'd be okay with that too, because then you would need to have open field units there to defend the rallied army before it hits. So again, I can see this going either way, but I'm upvoting it from the stance of that they're just drawing a line in the sand. And I think that's important for you to do, so you don't have like these one-off situations where, again, right? If they're doing that, anyone who has a bunch of cav trained, or anyone who, would be cav mains as an example, are able to utilize this. But not everyone is focusing. Not everyone, you can't sit there and say that every single competitive player out there has a bunch of cav available to them, to where every single player within an alliance, within every kingdom, or within any, within every one of the, like even like ABC and like AB kingdoms is just going to have cav available to them. They're probably prioritizing other troop types depending on what everyone's preferences for their build and for their strategies. So yeah, I think from those viewpoints, it makes sense to me. We hope that improving the strategic depth and balance of the 4 unit types in rally garrison combat will allow players to take part in rally garrison battles, regardless of their preferred unit type. Right, there we go. Right, they basically stated it there too as well. Question 7. When Bitter End is activated in rally garrison combat, hospital limits result in excessive unit deaths. This has a significant effect on subsequent battles. Will you change the rules regarding unit death? Interesting. I love how some people point clown. In order to encourage active participation in PvP combat, we have chosen to reduce the cost of taking part in battles. Firstly, we removed healing speed up and introduced elixir feature, adding maximum limits to all healing methods. Are they talking about like what they've done in the past? In order to discourage players from training too many legions, we have added relatively high hospital limits to policies. This prevents high legion numbers from having an outsized effect on battles. However, Unit death is another part of our combat balancing efforts. In battle, we needed a way to temporarily put one's opponent out of action, increasing the disparity between sides in order to bring the fight to a definite end, or a definite end, I guess maybe definitive, but at the same time, rules regarding unit death have also brought a degree of imbalance to the game. Compared to the relatively low cost of healing severely wounded units, unit death exacts a high cost and inflicts stresses that we did not intend. We also believe that each legion a player trains should contribute equally to combat. Interesting. Oh, wow, this is a long one. Geez. As a result, we are planning to make the following. Wow, this is probably the most in-depth answer that I've ever seen them give, hands down, to make the following changes. So they're probably gonna do something with ossuary here, huh? Retaining the existing rules for dead units entering the ossuary. There we go. It's mentioned. A proportion of dead units will be revived at the end of the season, which is the way it is currently. Okay. With the proportion determined by player policies and certain season gameplay features. At the end of the season, a 7-day Glorious Return event will begin, named, to be changed, to be, right? During the event, players will be able to revive up to 90% of unrevived units in the ossuary by obtaining. So you're going to be able to revive unrevived units. So basically, why don't you just say dead units? Right? I mean, I guess I get it. Like they needed to use a different word to differentiate between you being able to get a percentage of your deads back. So they're basically saying you're going to be able to revive up to 90% of the remaining. Like whatever the ossuary doesn't cover, you're going to be able to get up to 90%. I mean, if that's the case, why do you have to have a separate thing? Just raise the percentage from the ossuary on what you get back. Like this is oh gosh, this is my thing, man. This is so confusing, right? It's just simplify this. Why do we need to create a subcategory to the main category that you could still address with the main category? Why do we need to make a subcategory? I don't get that. Okay. Let's continue reading though. Revive up to 90% of unrevived units in the ossuary by obtaining return seals. The price of return seals will be much lower than the cost of training the equivalent number of T5s. Okay. Example. In Season 4, a player suffers 10,000. I want to point this out here. I have been begging them to give technical examples for some of these changes that they've been making. This is arguably possibly the first one that I've seen where they've actually given this along with an in-detailed answer. Okay. Suffers 10,000 dead T5 cavalry units. The proportion of units revived from the ossuary is as follows. The base is 30%, policies 20%, total is 50%. When the season ends, 50% of units are revived. 5,000 T5 cav. Okay, makes sense. 5,000 dead T5 cav units remain in the ossuary, of which up to 90%, so we were right on that, can be revived using return seals. The remaining 500 T5 cavalry units will die. With this change, the number of units that can die in a season has been effectively reduced by 95%. First off, that just seems like it's way too much, possibly. Greatly reducing actual losses resulting from unit death during the season. We will still retain the possibility for players to inflict heavy losses upon their opponents during the season. When units entering the ossuary, they cannot be used for the rest of the season, reducing the manpower of the enemy camp. But when the season ends, those losses can be recovered relatively easily. So basically what they're saying is they still want to keep the main objective of the KVK intact, which is that one side needs to eventually get drained so that way you can have kind of a definitive winner or champion, if you will. But then they're still going to allow you to get most of those deads back. Part of me wonders if that's the case. I mean, obviously, it doesn't mean... So there's two important parts here. Number one, you're either going to have to spend money or purchase the return seals, right? Because they didn't say how that's obvious. I don't want to sit here and play devil's advocate, but let's just be fair. That was conveniently left out on how you acquire those and what the cost of those will be, whether that is a monetary cost or if it's an in-game resource cost and or both. So that's number one. Number two is that by allowing up to this amount of troops to be recovered, part of me wonders if this could maybe reduce some spending from people that do relatively spend, because now maybe not like not like maybe where it's in a massive way, but reducing spending in these areas, right? So I guess I'm just like, to me, those are the two things that immediately come to mind. And I'm curious if you're someone who spends money on the game, and let's say you're like a mid heavy spender, or even just anyone that does, like, do you think that now this this feels like it's a little bit more favored in your direction? So, which is probably why some people mention pay to win. Okay, we got 2 questions left here. Now, number 8, the fellowship system in SOS 3 has been well received, why isn't it included in subsequent seasons? In SOS 3, 5 players from the same realm can form fellowships. Through daily activities, they can increase their fellowship level, unlocking a variety of abilities. These include merit store assistance. So I want to point this out. The way that they are answering this question is top tier. Why? Because they are talking about a system, but instead of just saying like, oh, this is the answer to it, they're allowing for you to understand what it is by explaining what the system is and what the benefits are and what it does, and then going in to any changes that they're going to make, right? So they're establishing a baseline and then building off of it. This is a great way to answer a question, just by the way, right? With how you format and the structure of it. So number 1, merit store assistance. Fellowship members can spend their own merits to help other members purchase items from the merit store, as well as helping other players. This gives players with a relatively high number of merits another way to spend them. Okay. Legion teleport. Fellowship members can teleport their legions to the location of other members in the field, allowing them to quickly assist other players or help them out in combat. Number 3, sharing heroes and artifacts. Fellowship members can share their heroes and artifacts with other members. Since the introduction of the fellowship system, we received a large amount of feedback indicating that players liked the merit store's assistance and Legion teleport features. These features will be retained. However, we received a lot of complaints about sharing heroes and artifacts, with players finding the system too troublesome and barely using it. After careful consideration and research, we have decided to scrap this feature. At the same time, we are preparing to introduce another extremely practical feature, Legion lending. This will allow other fellowship members to use your legions while you're offline. Okay, let me finish before carrying on the fight and gaining merits. After improvements have been made, the fellowship system will be introduced as a core gameplay feature for more seasons in the future, bringing you greater strategic depth. If you have any other ideas that you think could make the fellowship system even more fun, please feel free to share them with us. Okay. 2 things here we have to address. Number 1 is that this is the way that I think they should go about publicizing and talking about how feedback is being received, what conclusions they're drawing from it. Now, I would have loved to seen some numbers here. I would have loved to seen something like, we had over 5,000 requests or over 10,000 requests, right? Keep in mind, we understand that not every single person that plays the game is going to submit feedback, but it would still be nice to put some kind of a number to it where, like, out of everyone that submitted it, right, 88% of the submissions were very in favor of these 2 features, as an example. Something to that effect would be nice to see. However, them stating that they received the feedback, they viewed it as more of like, hey, we're testing this out, and then anything that people like, we'll obviously add, and anything they don't, we won't. That, I think, is a good way to do it, where it's not like, oh, we're just adding it in permanently forever. Now, yeah, maybe some things will make more sense than others when it comes to permanent additions or permanent removals. But for things that are like season specific, that you're like, hey, we're testing, and I've always said this, where I've loved the idea of them using KVK storylines to test out features and then get feedback from those features that are being tested to see if people would like for them to be added into the game as a permanent fixture. Then we get to number 2. The second part to this, which is the other side of it, is the very first thing that I think of is, oh, look, right, let's read this line again. Legion lending. This will allow other fellowship members to use your legions while you're offline. Basically, they are addressing piloting. Let's just call it what it is. Let's be professionally fair on both sides. You are addressing piloting with this. You are creating a workaround for piloting to be done. However, I wonder what limitations there will be. As an example, probably one of the worst ways to abuse this is that's like someone making an account, like a scout account, right? That's level 2 or level 7 or whatever it is in a kingdom, and like just whatever, and any top kingdom. And then they get to go and borrow those 5 legions and they can use them whenever they're on. Now, do I think it's going to be that egregious in a sense? I don't. At least I hope it's not. If they put like, so, and there's kind of, I guess, a sub part to this, they would need to put some kind of restrictions in there. For example, like maybe you have to be CH25 before you can use Legion lending. I just feel like there has to be, and that's just an example, but I feel like there has to be some prerequisite here, right? It can't just be, oh, I have an account in the kingdom and my account's level 2 and I'm going to use NEPHISTO's 5, just giving a very extreme example, using NEPHISTO's 5 legions, right? Dear God, I hope it's not that. But if you put some kind of high prerequisite in there, like I said, to me, I think I would say like you at least got to be CH25 and in the alliance that person's in, just as like 2 prerequisites that I could think of. But then the other side of it is this seems like a way to basically address, and maybe it could be, it may not be all bad. Maybe it could be a good way to address the whole piloting stuff, because when you think about it, it could be something where if somebody hops online, well, because, oh boy, I got to think about this now, because the challenge is that, well, no, that's not true. It could be a situation where, because the first thing that I'm thinking of is, well, if anyone's going to be fighting, they're going to be online, right? But if you're someone who's just drained for that day, or you're already drained and someone stronger than you has more troops available, more stamina, etc., and or stamina, right, etc., they can keep going, and you're able to get online to assist as a member of the alliance, then why not? Not to say like why not, like yeah, this should absolutely be in the game, but just in talking it through, I could see it from that perspective. So like maybe if it's something like that and they put some prerequisites in, okay. Do I think that this needs to be in the game? I'm gonna be honest, no, I don't. This is one of those things that it's really skirting the line for me on just on that whole kind of piloting concept. And to me, it's part of me feels like now you're doing more than what you could do from your own individual activity, right? And what I mean by that is, if you have drained your account and you've done everything you can do, like you're done, right? You have to wait to either heal to get more troops back up or wait till the end of the season, right? Depending on on how far along you are in it. But now it's like they're giving you an opportunity to, for example, I just want to point, like, this is one of those things, and I could do like a whole another video on this, but this is one of those things where now you might, because if this feature is going to get added consistently, this is one of those things where now having 24/7 time zone, having like 24/7 time zone coverage kingdoms is going to be more adamant. Because now this is going to be one of those things where you can literally have like a third shift team in your kingdom that can utilize and take advantage of this, right? The other side is, are you going to be able to lend legions when, which I imagine based on how it sounds like this is like if that person's offline, maybe there's like a feature or something that give you permission to utilize units from their city. And it doesn't matter if the person who's doing the lending or the lender is online or not, right? So I mean, again, there's quite a bit of unknown here, but this feature could actually have massive implications on the way that kingdoms are structured, on the way that people recruit, instead of, because a lot of what's really happening now is you're mostly having a lot of kingdoms that are recruiting for like peak activity time zones, like whatever the majority time zone is within a kingdom. There are some exceptions, of course, but for the most part, that's usually what we're seeing, right? It's like really high up times and then really low down times. But this feature could really change the entire landscape. And that's just one area that I've thought of so far. So I'd love to know what you guys think. Clearly this has some upvotes on it, but do I think this needs to be in the game? I don't. So I'm curious on what you guys think on this one too as well. Okay, let's go to, I guess, the last one. So previous Q&As mentioned a location-based quest system that would make exploration less of a chore. When will we get to try it? Okay, so we have, oh wait, did I even finish reading all this? I don't know if I did. Since the introduction of the fellowship, hang on, lending, this will allow carrying on fights and getting merits. Oh, this will allow your fellowship members to use your legions when you're offline. Yeah, okay, so never mind. It did say offline. I didn't even need to reiterate that one or say either or. Okay, thanks for your patience. The system, now known as the Questoscope, has now completed development and is being tested in certain servers. We are getting ready to roll it out to all servers as part of the next update. The Questoscope system will replace the existing scout camp system. If you have any uncompleted points of interest, such as caves, villages, or camps on the map, you will be able to complete them via the Questoscope. Unexplored mist areas can also be explored via Questoscope exploration quests. It's worth mentioning that the Questoscope system is not just for exploration, but also provides other kinds of quests and awesome rewards. For example, completing gathering quests via the Questoscope only takes a short time, but offers a large amount of resources. Okay, so basically they're just pimping out the scouting, more grindy aspect of the game for that. The Questoscope currently offers peacekeeping, gathering, combat challenge quests. We hope that the Questoscope system will provide you with a faster, more convenient experience when completing quests, and we look forward to your feedback when the feature goes live. Awesome. Okay, that's it for this developer Q&A. As always, right, if you're reading this in game and not here, then be sure you guys fill out the survey. So that way, I think you might also get some rewards on that too as well if they're offering some there. But definitely be sure to leave your feedback without a doubt. Listen, this, regardless of how I feel about some of them, about some of the answers that we were given, this by far to me has been the absolute best Q&A overall, and absolutely the best Hot Topics Q&A that they have done to date. And I hope that they keep up with this way of answering, because it is very much appreciated. Yeah. So you guys let me know which one's your favorite, what's your least favorite, and why. Let me know in the comments below. That's it for me. As always, until next time, we'll catch you later.